Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Gregory Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Kraig Bowers. And beneath me is Joe Jackson and Aidan Kunst. They've joined us here in previous shows. They are from the Feed the Post podcast. They're on Twitter. They do a lot of Purdue Boilermaker coverage. And we are excited here on what we normally call Braggs in the Stands to bring you a new level of coverage and start going live immediately following some of these games, especially when we're on the road. When we're at home, Joe and Aidan will be doing spaces like they always do, but we thought we'd start going live for the games that we're at home for. So welcome. We're going to be giving you instant reaction and analysis. I think all of us here bring a little something different to the table analytically from a coach's perspective. Kraig, really, really smart when it comes from his reporter's perspective. Yeah, he's a big reporter at Mackey Arena now doing the big thing. Yeah, reporters. But we're having fun doing the coverage, and we're glad all of you can join us here tonight. And we are certainly happy that the first time we try this out that the Boilers win in dramatic fashion on the road at Ohio State. Never a day off in the Big Ten. Never comes easy in the Big Ten. Certainly looked bleak. I think Ohio State's largest lead at one point was 12, and Purdue just kept chipping away, similar to what they did with Rutgers. But this time, the game-winning three from Fletcher Lawyer is the deciding factor as he hit it against the Rutgers. And this time, they're able to D up and end the game in a winning fashion. So very excited to talk about this. Kraig, I'm going to let you start it off, and then we'll go around the room. Your instant reaction to this game. And You're muted, my friend. That's okay. So while Kraig is getting his audio fixed, and hey, we're, maybe muted. Jump back in, come out and jump back in and see if it works. I'm sorry. It's okay. We'll get it fixed. Hey, Rome wasn't built in a day. As I always say, brick by brick. So, Joe, while Kraig's getting that situated, why don't you give us your instant reaction to that game?
Yeah, gritty win, possibly undeserved sort of win. I think that was pretty uncharacteristic, the amount of turnovers that Purdue had, 14, and it was, 5 or 6 had to be post-entry passes. Just ugly, to be honest. Worst post-entry passing game of the year. Part of it, I think, was, Ohio State. I think Purdue wasn't really expecting, I've kind of been preaching all year that, like, teams don't expect Braden Smith to have the length that he does. I think Purdue kind of got caught off guard a little bit by that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. A win's a win. Finally able to knock down shots. We knew it was going to come at some point. We'll see where they, as the season progresses, where they kind of level out to, but huge shot by Lawyer. Smith had, just another great game, just doing everything he could. So overall, just really great to get a win. 3-1 is a lot different than 2-2 in the Big Ten. And especially with this year where 14, 15 wins might get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said when it comes to the entry passes. I mean, I've always said, that is something that seems to be a lost art sometimes because players, when they come out of high school, they're not used to having to get it in. They're taking the ball not out. They don't always have a good big man on their team, and that's an art form you really have to perfect. And for most of the season, they've been very good at it, but today they had their struggles. And when you have Zach Edey down there, there's not much of an excuse. He's a pretty big target. You need to feed him. Edey did have the one where they tried to slip it to him and he couldn't handle it. Maybe Edey could have came down with that. It would have been an easy bucket, but at the same time, Boilers come away with the win. Kraig, it seems like you got your issues situated. It's all good. All good. No need, we all make mistakes. It's all good. But just like the Boilers, we learn from them and then we take the ball and win the damn game. Kraig, what did you think of the win? No, we cannot. We are off to a rousing start. It's okay. We'll get it. We'll get you in here. I promise.
Game one.
Something is amiss with Kraig. We do our shows every week. Not sure what it is. So I'm not a lip reader, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, Kraig, if we can't get it situated, you can hop on from your phone, which would not be ideal, but I know that'll work. So Aidan, why don't you give us your assessment while Kraig tries to get this situated?
Yeah, so I thought, it was a game that Purdue kind of obviously, I mean, they pulled it out in the end, and it wasn't looking like a win for most of the game. There's no question about that, but it's a kind of win that you're going to need. I mean, you realize, guys, that might be, I mean, that might be the toughest game in the Big Ten we play this year. From a perspective of that might be the second best or whatever opponent in the Big Ten, and we had to go to their place. So really, just a massive win, as Joe said, for the Big Ten, championship hopes. I thought today was really a game where the freshmen again showed us what they're made of. Edey, I thought Ohio State had a great game plan for Zach Edey, and they needed all 16 of Braden's points. They needed all 11 of Fletcher's points. Obviously, Fletcher was probably might have been his worst half of the year in the first half. He comes back, he bounces back, he hits the big shot at the end. But Braden was really so good throughout the course of the game. Painter really, it felt like kind of just took the reins off, said, you know what, we're just going to let you cook out of ball screen situations. He was the one guy who was just indispensable. He played 38 minutes, and even the two he was off, it felt like, man, we can't afford to have this guy out. And for him to be a freshman doing that on the road, he finally looked to take his own shots. And so I think this is a great game for the Boilermakers, because I think some guys around Edey had to step up. It was a game where Edey was played pretty well. Guys did step up. They get a great road win, bounce back from Rutgers, and now you feel real good going into the Palestra on Sunday against Penn State.
Absolutely. So, for people that may not know, I mean, Aidan, you come from a coaching perspective. You're wearing the emblem. Why don't you tell the viewers kind of what you do as far as your coaching background, and then, and obviously the podcast work and online work you do.
Yeah. So I'm just getting started in coaching here, but I'm in my third year as a high school basketball coach, varsity assistant and head freshman coach here at West Lafayette High School, the local high school here in town, while I'm at Purdue. So it's certainly no high level or anything like that, but it is, I think you have a new respect in terms of talking about Purdue. You have a new respect for the decisions that a coach like Matt Painter has to make, and just the constant adjusting, the constant tweaking. How do you get your guys to buy in? I think a great example of that tonight was Fletcher Lawyer benched to start the second half, right? He was really bad in that first half. And I was texting with Joe, and it just seemed like the right adjustment was Jenkins to start the second half and Gillis to start the second half. And lo and behold, that's what Painter does. And the Boilers come out firing. Lawyer obviously gets kind of fueled by that, it seemed, and then hits the big shot in the end. So I think that was a great example of coaching in action. That's what you want to do as a coach is make adjustments throughout the game, put your guys in position to succeed, and continue to empower them by letting them take the open, good looks from three that they hadn't been making. And then ultimately it feels real good tonight when you go 13 of 31 from downtown.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Matt Painter said it in the postgame show, or his postgame presser after Rutgers. He said sometimes the bench is the best motivator, and you learn from your mistakes from there, because you can watch it and it motivates you to play better. And there it is. Fletcher Lawyer in the second half, no points in the first half. What did he finish with? 11 or 14?
11.
Yeah, 11.
11.
Yeah.
So, and none bigger than that final three. Guy has ice water in his veins, as Chip Carey used to say for the Cubbies, and Rod Beck. But no, it was a huge win. So like I said, I just kind of enjoy the balance of what we bring here, because Aidan, you do come from a coaching perspective. Joe, you're very analytical. For those of you that don't know Joe, he's on Twitter at Joe Jackson, as we've pulled up, and we'll continue to share, where you can find these guys. But, he does a video breakdown after every game. He'll have one for us tomorrow, very organized, and gives you different looks at all the different looks on each side of the ball. And so we've got analytical, we've got a coaching perspective. I'm the meatball fan, and I love being in that corner, because then I can be wrong and not have any accountability to it. And Kraig is, once he gets his stuff situated, I promise, has very good stuff. He runs Boiler Diehards Facebook page and gives his 10 thoughts after every game, and they're very well articulated. And me and Kraig have been working on this venture to grow what we're trying to do here at what we call Brags in the Stands. But we're going to start calling some of these shows Boilers in the Stands. So those of you that are new to what we're doing here can kind of get a little brand recognition to as I fumble through my words here. But that's what we're trying to do here, is just give you guys, the Purdue fans, kind of an outlet to talk about things, win or lose. I mean, if they had lost today, we would have went live just the same and reacted to it, and I probably would have been a lot more yelling and pissed off. But that's what we do as fans, right? Because at the end of the day, we all are fans, and we're just waiting for them to get to the promised land. So exciting win. We got Kraig back, and I'm excited to hear his thoughts.
That's why Fletcher hit the 3. He didn't want you to be mad for the first show.
It was a beautiful thing. It was poetic. So we're really hoping that Kraig, I know Kraig's, it's killing him inside.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
I have no idea. Like, my headphones were working, but my mic wasn't working. I don't know what was going on there, and I'm super sorry for all that. But
no, it's okay. I mean, like I said, we're gonna do a lot of these, and Rome isn't built in a day. And by the end of the year, when we're doing our Final Four post-game show, no one will remember today. So for today, we'll just bust your balls a little bit, and I know we got. We got some people.
I'm just a simple farmer, Bragg, so off my back with the whole technology thing. But I didn't get to hear everything that was said because I was trying to unplug and plug in and everything else. Yeah, that's my cousin. That's my cousin, right? He told me he was going to enter the chat if Ohio State won so he could blow us some shit. But
now he's blowing you some shit.
Luckily, that didn't happen, but he's still trying to do it either way.
Yes.
But yeah, no. I don't know what you guys already covered. But I know
we want to hear your instant reaction to this. That's kind of, I think, how we'll start these shows, to give everybody their instant reaction. It's an exciting win, and normally you're working on your 10 thoughts for Boiler Diehards, which you'll probably be doing past midnight now tonight that we're doing this. So, maybe give us a little teaser to what some of your bullet point thoughts are coming off this big win.
Yeah, I don't know about Aidan and Joe, but personally, I was never worried in that game. I knew we had in the bag the whole time, right? I mean, I think we
for sure.
agree on that. We all felt like we had it in the bag the whole time. But no, I think a couple things that jump out to me. If we're going to go on the negative side a little bit from the beginning, and one of the things I said coming in this game was Ohio State had a bunch of dudes that could hit tough mid-range shots. And one of the things Purdue likes to give up defensively, the way we guard, is we're going to dare you to shoot tough mid-range shots. And for a really long period there, they hit a bunch of tough, really mid-range shots. And it's kind of a daring game of like, okay, how many of those can you hit? And how long can you hit them consistently? And in that second half, I didn't really think they did. And I hit Joe up on Twitter about what are we doing different on Sensible? Because he tore us up in that first half, and then we seemed to shut him down a little bit. Not completely, but we seemed to shut him down a little bit in that second half. And if he hasn't already talked about it, I'd like to hear a little bit about why he thinks what we did adjustment-wise in that second half might have helped to shut him down. The other thing is I've said multiple times, like, I've heard some people, and whoever that caller was on that one show, on that radio show for Painters, say, like, we need to drive the ball. We need to drive the ball. You saw in that first half what it looks like when we try to drive the ball. We don't have dudes that are attack the rim guards. We just don't. We're either going to be a hit the three and post team, or we're not going to be very good. And they shot their way through it and hit threes at a high percentage by the time the game was done, and they've got to do that. And I guess the last thing I would say is, there was some Ethan Morton hate kind of thrown around early in the game, mid-game. I even mentioned something about his passing today because it didn't necessarily look pretty over some stretches. But Ethan Morton is in there to play defense, and Ethan Morton didn't hit the shot. But we never get that ball back if it's not for Ethan Morton's defense as a wing out there. And he is a all Big Ten defender. He is by far and away our best defender. And we all need to level off a little bit in terms of expectation there.
Well, and Fatty Matty's here in the chat, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. And he's being critical of Morton shooting threes, and I think there's no question that defenses are scouting, saying we're going to give Ethan Morton the three at this point. I think he's a capable 3-point shooter, but at this point he's been shaky. There's no question about it, and I think that was on display at the end of the game when the defender for Ohio State fell. Braden Smith comes around the curl. And now that leaves a guy open, and they kick it to Ethan in the middle, and they don't chase to Ethan. They dared him to shoot that ball. But guess what? He made that shot, and it was a big shot that he knocked down. So while, is he your number one option to knock down a three? You drawing up the play for Ethan Morton to win the game? Maybe not necessarily, but at the same time, you got to give the kid a lot of credit for knocking down the shot when it counted, and hopefully he can turn the corner when it comes to that. Obviously, Brandon Newman, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, those guys have been knocking it down a little more consistently. And those first two guys I mentioned certainly have probably a nicer release, in a shooting form. But at the end of the day, these guys are capable shooters. And like Kraig said, they got to start hitting them. And, early in the game, it didn't look like they were going to. And the 3-point, shot saved them tonight in a lot of ways. So, that's
and I think, man, I think there was a couple of games where we just got timid. It was like, oh, I missed one. I'm not going to shoot anymore. I missed one. I'm not going to shoot anymore. And in some respects, it was like your guys that were willing to shoot more weren't necessarily. They were still decent 3-point shooters, but not necessarily your lockdown guys. And I just appreciated. I don't know that they had a choice. But they decided to shoot through it. And Braggs, I got to give my son a shout out real quick.
Absolutely. That's what we'll do here.
He's throwing up here. He's a Wisconsin fan. He's going with the hi dad thing here. Listening in on the show, but my son
raise your son a Wisconsin fan.
I don't know
what is happening here.
He lives in Wisconsin. He's a big Wisconsin fan, but he's listening on the show tonight, so I had to give him a shout out.
Well, nobody's perfect. That's okay. So, Joe, Kraig wanted the question asked, and that's certainly where I wanted to take this next. I mean, what changed? Because in the first half, it didn't look good, although they closed the lead to 36-33 at the half, which was very impressive. But just overall, it looked like Ohio State was controlling the tempo on both sides of the ball. They, had a good game plan for Zach Edey. They were, getting in the passing lanes. They were being physical defensively, and then offensively. Sensabaugh is just a nightmare to have to try to guard. And then they had, other guys that were really, stepping up in a big way. So what changed in the second half for Purdue to kind of start to take the momentum back and ultimately win the game?
They hit threes. No, it's more than that. But I mean, that is a big part. Like they started knocking down shots, and then you can just see when that happens, the confidence is there. Smith started really get going aggressive downhill. As Kraig said, like there's not kind of opposite to Ohio State. Purdue is not a team that can create for itself a ton outside of Edey in the post, and then the other thing is Smith pick and roll. Painter once again just kind of let him do his thing, and I think he forced a couple passes that were pretty bad, but aside from that, he really got going. Finished with I think 16 or something like that, 6 assists. Just another elite game from a freshman that's what is this, his 14th game or something like that. And then also to start that second, so obviously there's that the 3 straight threes at the end of the first half was huge, bring it back. Then Edey coming out super strong that second half. I think he might have had 4 or 6 straight points to start the half. And it was quick. It was, going straight at Akpara, with Key being out for the whole game. And then that just kind of sets the table. So now you really, obviously you're worried about Edey in general if you're Ohio State. But all right, now he's got it cooking a little bit. He's getting to his right hook. All right, we have to double team. We have to, send 2-3 guys. And, I think Edey, aside from maybe 1 or 2 errant passes, did a good job kicking out, finding the guys. And then the ball doesn't stick with this team at all, ever. Willing to make the extra pass. It could be, the one that I remember was a kick out to Smith, and then I think it was to Jenkins, and then the extra pass to Braden for 3 in the corner. Yeah, that was the one where Sewing fell down, and then Braden tried to help him up in the middle of the play. It was really weird. And then defensively, I think, I don't know, and maybe Aidan will be able to speak to this a little more. I don't know if a ton changed other than water found its level a little bit. like even the first half, Sensabaugh had the breakaway dunk, and then I think Morton let him get loose once, if I recall. And then the rest of the first half, I thought was good defense. And it's just like Sensabaugh's a pro. He's a top 30, top 20 pick. That's just a bucket getter. And sometimes there's things you just can't do about that. I think in the second half they did a little better, just making it tougher for him to catch. But they weren't going to double or anything like that. From what it looks like, you just kind of trust Morton, and Morton did all he could. Like I said, like Sensabaugh is just, they said what, 6'6", 240. If he gets downhill, gets a shoulder into you, like you're not sticking with him. And then he's just him suing or just pretty much automatic from the mid range. Thorne's really good from 3, but just making it a little bit tougher for him to catch, make him a little bit more uncomfortable. And I think that's really, really all it was. Aside from that, you hope.
So, like you were saying, to the point of water finding its level in the first half early on the call, I forget who was with Gus Johnson, but he mentioned, Purdue can't be mad because they're getting good shots. They're just not going in. And ultimately, so that's to your point that not much changes the result of the shot making, so, Painter's so process based.
This is how it's been for 5 or 6 games. Like even back to Nebraska, like it was good shots. Just
isn't that how Purdue is every year? It feels like.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, in the last 5 years at least.
Well, I mean that's his model. His model is put a bunch of guys that can hit threes, and throw into the post. Like that's the model. We're never gonna. Ivy was kind of the outlier in terms of like having a guy that could just go one-on-one and break guys down off the dribble, And sometimes you saw that last year where like Painter had to figure out how to use him because he really never had that guy and didn't know how to use him at sometimes last year, right?
Right.
Like that's not Painter's thing. So, I said it multiple times in the last 2 weeks. Like you can tell them to quit shooting threes, but like this team isn't going to win if they're not hitting threes. Like they've got to figure out how to knock them down. And thankfully, after that frigid cold, let it snow start. They finally did. You get that reference, Braggs?
I did. Christmas season is past, though. Unfortunately,
after that frigid start, like they finally started knocking some down. But that's who we are. Like we're not going to be a team we're not going to be Ohio State. We don't have a suing. We don't have a Sensabaugh. We're not going to be guys that go out there and drill down a bunch of, crazy takes to the rim or 5 to 8 footers. That's just not it. Like you've got to be the best version of yourself, and they got to shoot through that when they have those struggles.
Because
I'm just glad you didn't say, baby, it's cold outside.
I thought you were going to go with Baby Shark there for a second.
No, absolutely not. No, and then the other part of it too is, to me, the thing that I said during the game, like, because I'm very storyline or looking at, demeanor, you guys are looking at the X's and O's and the different things. I like kind of looking at some of these things that necessarily aren't on the stat sheet. And the thing that really stood out to me was their demeanor. These guys don't really break. Like they may not be good enough in certain aspects, and they're flawed. They're not perfect. They're not a perfect team. They're not perfect players. But their demeanor, Zach Edey gets pissed off, and I like that. He in the second half he took it personal, and when he started putting him in, you can hear him on the telecast yelling. Braden Smith, this dude is a gamer, and when he gets going, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's saying stuff to the crowd. I like that. We all know what Mason Gillis is made of. He had a bunch of big plays, hit down some shots. He almost had a big ball in the corner, obviously didn't go down, but just in general, I feel like these guys don't break as much, Fletcher Lawyer, all these guys I like their attitude.
Yeah.
They don't panic, if it's not going perfect, they don't panic. And I think that is something they get from their head coach, Matt Painter. And I think that's a big shot in the arm. Aidan, we heard from Joe as far as what we thought changed. Is there anything that stood out to you that hasn't been covered?
I thought Purdue was able to pull it back in the direction of the type of game they want to play, which is slow, efficient offense. They took 10 less shots in the second half and they scored 5 more points. It felt like Ohio State was getting out and running a little bit more in that first half, and some of that was probably due to Purdue just taking quick shots and missing them, and then maybe they started to fall a little bit towards the end of the first half and then into the second half. But it felt like Purdue kind of ripped it back in their direction. Obviously, Ohio State has the athletes. They have a little bit more maybe pure offensive skill. And then I thought they did a nice job making sense of all work, like Joe said. I don't know that it was any schematic change. It was just Morton, continuing to try and bother him. And I think Ohio State got went a little bit away from sensible. I thought it felt to me that they started to try and punish the Gillis first, whoever happened to be guarding Suing, and they started running Suing off those wide pin downs into the where he's going to his left hand into the lane, and Edey's in drop coverage, and so then to Kraig's point, Suing can get to that little left-handed floater, little left-handed pull up that he's really good at. So I felt like it was maybe a little bit of that. It just felt like they played hard, and to your point, Braggs, like this team looked pissed off after that Rutgers loss, especially Braden Smith, who was called out by his head coach after that Rutgers game for playing really poorly. He played very poorly in that Rutgers game.
Yeah, hey, Painter called him out for trying to make spectacular passes.
Yep.
And in 40 minutes, there was only one pass where I was like, got a little fancy.
Right, because that was what I was going to ask you.
One pass in 40 minutes where I thought he got a little fancy, and the rest of them were just boom, chest pass, bounce.
Right, because that's what I was going to ask you. John Randall asked that exact question in the chat, and he said it seemed our shooters received the ball in better places to shoot tonight. And to your point, Matt Painter said that specifically. Make the good pass where it's within their ready to shoot motion. So you're saying that's what you saw for the majority of the night, Kraig?
Well, I'll let Aidan's the coach. I'll let him answer that. But I personally, I thought they received it in the pocket way better.
Yes, they absolutely did. And Braden was just solid, man. I mean, the game plan from the start was to get him in pick and roll, and they ran more ball screens in that first half, trying to attack. I think probably it was key that they had planned for, and then ultimately it became Akpara with that real hard hedge. He was getting out way out there on ball screens with Edey and trying to cut Braden off. And usually with that, it's tough as a point guard because you got to play through a bit of a bump. You'll notice if there's a hard hedge, it kind of hip checks you and you got to play through it. But if you do get through that hard hedge and you can turn the corner, as Braden did often tonight, you're going to find somebody open. Now, is that somebody usually going to be Morton? Yeah. And so you kind of take your chances because that's the other team, the opponent's game plan. But yeah, I've thought the passes were crisp from Braden, but at least to the shooters. But, and it seemed Morton's passing was a bit off of where it usually is. I mean, you guys remember there was that stretch where it felt like for sure we were going to lose when Edey gets that slip to the rim, which he never does. He slipped the ball screen, had a wide open dunk. Morton throws it away. Next possession, they get a perfectly executed backdoor play for Smith. Edey chucks it over his head out of bounds. And then you have the unreal pass by Smith that was almost too good. And Morton travels on that layup. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, we just gave away 6 points in a back and forth game. And maybe 8 if you count the kind of the phantom charge call on Kaufman-Wren that he scored on. And you're just thinking, oh my God.
I love that you called that the phantom charge call.
that was terrible.
Right, because in the first half, Ohio State had at least 2, if not 3 moments where guys, Sensabaugh and the other guy, who was the other guy going off for them?
Suing.
Both of them taking him into the post and giving him a little bump and then going up with it. And they at least got 4 or 6 points from that, where they could have called offensive foul. If Purdue sells it more and flops back a little more, maybe they get the call. And then in the second half, Trey Kaufman-Wren tries to go right to it, and he gets the offensive call first, the offensive charge first, and then they end up doing a makeup call on Sensabaugh and calling it on him. Yeah. Kraig, you have a friend on Twitter that's a former college basketball ref, correct? That's who we were.
Isaiah. Well, yeah. Isaiah and Greg both ref. I don't know if any of them ever did college, but Isaiah said and I'm gonna have to. If he's not listening, I'm gonna be mad. But he just flat out said, like, I wouldn't be mad about that call if they'd called it consistently the whole game, but that has happened all game long, and they've not called it. So, like, where's your line? And his point was the refs had kind of drawn a line of what was okay from that bump down and what wasn't. And in that case, he thought he pushed the line the other way to give.
Yeah, he tweeted, if they're calling it consistently, I can defend it, but they haven't. Given how physical this has been, you got to let that go. He didn't push off at all, and the contact wasn't forcible. And it says former basketball official. So,
I don't know if it's college
to what level, regardless, he knows what he's talking about. And I completely agree. I mean, it just seemed unnecessary. We do have some questions in the chat from Eric McMullen. He wants to know about Brandon Newman, kind of found his way where it wasn't his night to be in the rotation. He was in early on for a few plays. Joe, do you have any kind of assessment as to why maybe the Painter went with different rotations tonight?
One, I think just riding the hot hand of Jenkins. He finished 3 for 3 from 3, 19 minutes. This was a Smith game, so Jenkins is. Smith played 38 minutes. You couldn't take him off the floor, so now Jenkins can't play really any points, and so now it becomes a little. I know they run at times Smith, Jenkins, and Newman, but I think with the physicality, it's why Fletcher didn't play or why Fletcher didn't start that second half. Newman is a really good defender. And I like him in where he's spotting up or maybe curling off a screen. But as soon as he kind of has to put the ball on the ground and make a move, I don't think his handle's there. And so, Ohio State was being physical. Those Chicago actions that Purdue loves running the, down screen into a direct handoff. Ohio State tore Lawyer up in those. Just couldn't let him get anywhere, kind of with that hedging that we talked about. And I don't think you could put Newman in those spots. And so now
Newman had 4 minutes of play, and David Jenkins Jr. had 19. Jenkins finishes 3 for 3 from 3-point range with 9 points.
Yeah, this is why I'm a Joe Jackson stan, and why I called him the most famous person.
Aren't we all?
When they asked for a famous Joe the other night, because that's it. Jenkins came in, and we saw this earlier in the year. I don't remember if it was Marquette or West Virginia. But there was a game where Painter shoved Jenkins in there, and it's not. I'm telling you guys, it's not the pressure; it's the length. You can put a bunch of on-ball pressure on these guys, but if you have length, if you're 6'6" across your wings, that's what bothers Purdue. Not necessarily just the pressure on its own. And Ohio State is not a great defensive team, but they have length across their guards and wings, and that was bothering us. And when you put Jenkins and Smith in there together, it kind of settled them down. They made better decisions. Jenkins isn't a true point, but he's the next closest thing besides Smith in terms of making those really good decisions and passes from that spot. So I thought that really settled them down. And then when you get Jenkins hitting 3 of 3 from 3, like there was a piece of me tonight when he hit those first 2, I was like, oh, maybe this is that game where Jenkins reverts to his old self and he goes for 20 tonight. And I was actually a little mad when he got pulled out the first time. I wanted him to stay in there because I thought he looked good in terms of what he was doing. And I thought he was really getting up and D'ing his guy on the defensive end too. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a big change. And I think something that gets lost maybe in a night with that Lawyer late 3, that Morton steal and everything else is Jenkins only hit 3 shots, but all 3 of those shots were friggin' big. In moments where we had to have a shot.
And I think to the Newman thing, as Kraig said, you can't teach length, and that goes for Purdue too. And who's the only wing guy we have who is 6'6"? Well, it's Morton. And Morton played 18 minutes in the second half because he was the only guy who had a snowball's chance in hell, to keep the snow analogies going, to guard Sensabaugh. Newman wouldn't have been able to touch Sensabaugh. That would have just been unfair. And there was a point where Purdue went Smith, Jenkins, Lawyer, first, Kaufman, Wren. and tried to guard Sensabaugh at first, and it just got cooked. And I think Morton really was the only guy who had a chance, like with his speed and length combination. He had a chance, and so then Jenkins hit the shot.
Looked out of place tonight.
Yeah.
In that game. Like as good as he's been in certain games, like he couldn't.
He can't protect the rim, and when he's out there at the 5,
trouble guarding anybody off the bounce tonight.
Yeah.
So we've made it this far into the show, and we've really yet to cover the potential national player of the year, at least one of the guys in the running for it. Debbie in the chat says poor Edey was mauled all game.
He was.
Edey gets mauled every game, but he certainly was mauled again tonight when he got that holding call on the rebound. He was being held that entire possession as soon as the possession had started. And then, it gets to the end of the shot clock. They put the shot up. They're still holding his jersey, and they finally get the call for it. Zach Edey, I knew, I had a feeling as we got into Big Ten play, these 25 and 18 games were going to start to dissipate because the Big Ten knows how to, is used to playing amazing big men, having to defend amazing big men. That's a Big Ten staple, and we're seeing it throughout the Big Ten games we've been through. Zach's going to have to deal with this all year, but at the end, again, just like Lawyer, when they were down 3, Zach Edey, they give it to him in the post. He's going to go left, and they Ohio State was leaving him one-on-one for the majority of the game. They were saying, you try to beat us. And they even had their big man Key go down in the first half with a shoulder injury. And to Zach's credit at the end, he knocks that shot down. And, eventually that helped lead the Boilers to victory. Whoever wants to take it first, how do we feel about Zach Edey's night tonight?
I mean, it's just first of all, I got to just quickly say, we didn't talk about Edey for 35 minutes. And I think legitimately every single spaces that me and Aidan have done, after games, we get like 25 minutes in and we're like, hey, should we talk about Edey? Because he just put up like 25 and 15.
Right. We take it for granted. He had 16 points, 11 boards, and what am I seeing here?
4 assists.
4 assists. Thank you. You can see it better than this old man. 6 of 11 from shooting.
Dude, there's nobody that can see that other than like.
We'll let the kids see it because we get this. The old timers up top. We had to get our glasses.
You can see that, Joe.
I can see it if I get close to it.
It just
nobody
covers your
can see
computer
that besides
screen, right?
like vampires with extra good vision or something.
I'm gonna need a 60-inch screen here. No, but go ahead, Joe, with what you were saying.
Yeah, no, it's an Edey game. Like this is your, I don't know if this is the normal for him because I think he might get a little bit more scoring at various points, but gonna just dominate the boards. 11 total, and even a few more just tip outs that probably don't get counted for him. And I think there was a little bit today of a little bit too tentative at times, not looking for it. Looking for his shot. He was waiting for the double and just waiting to pass out. And I think there's times early, especially where if he can kind of just assert himself, just go at whoever's on him. Don't let the double come and then go. That'll be a big difference. But he did that for a little bit in the second half. He seems to be really good at picking his spots. I would like to see him more aggressive throughout, but I also get he's playing 35 minutes or whatever. He's not going to be able to absorb every possession. And so he has to pick his spots, and he does it well. He knows when he needs to kick out. He knows that second to last possession. He needs to just go get a bucket, and then the double doesn't come. And then a couple possessions before it was kickouts waiting for the double. So, I think this was an interesting matchup for him when he was on defense because especially when Key was out, and if they went small, he's kind of misplaced, I guess. Is tougher to put him in actions that can help him. You can't really put him in drop against a ton of guards that are going to hit pull-ups because that's exactly what drop is giving. Drop coverage against the pick and roll, it's going to give up pull-ups, and that's what Ohio State wants. So on that end, it was still just good to see him. He still just finds a way to play. I have stats over here, so you don't have to pull them up. What did he play? 32 minutes. He played 32 minutes against a team that had 1 6'11" guy, and then after Key went down, 6'6" and lower or shorter. He still just finds a way to play 32 minutes, just assert his dominance, and that's why, that's why he should be National Player of the Year or top 2, whatever you want to say right now. Like, even if he isn't purely scoring, he just finds ways to absolutely impact the game.
And, last game he gets in foul trouble. So like tonight, as Alec Rockhold is pointing out, he tried to stay out of foul trouble. And I think you saw him purposely, like on the first made basket for Ohio State of the game, he could have went up for the shot block and chose not to. He let him get the easy layup, live to fight for the next play. And then as the game went on, he picked up his only foul at the end by no easy buckets. I'm gonna shot block this dude, and it's either gonna be a block or go to line, which was great. And the guy's a 73% free throw shooter from the line, and for whatever reason, the guy on the telecast said he was a good free throw shooter. I'm like, I don't know if 73% qualifies as a good free throw shooter, but he ends up going 1 for 1 from the line. And that's a big play, So, but what do you think of Alex's assessment there? Is there a balance? He was in foul trouble last game, but should he, now this game, it's like what's your assessment of that, of how he played defensively? Is he trying to stay out of foul trouble, or did you think he did a good job?
I think he's figured out how to be pretty vertical. Just the practices I've been to with Purdue, they just drill this stuff over and over and over again, of arms above your ears, right? Straight up. Don't use your body, go straight up on guys. And I think he's really perfected that, even though, yes, he had foul trouble against Rutgers. That's really the only game where he's had that happen. So I think he's an elite rim protector. I loved him going for the block there. Obviously, like you said, make him earn it. Goes 1 for 2. We don't get the rebound, unfortunately, but went 1 for 2. It's always going to be hard for him in ball screens, especially against the Ohio State team they really stretched us out wide tonight, really got us to the sidelines. And there was a lot of room in that middle when they went 5 out with Okpara, who I thought showed well for himself, by the way. I like Okpara.
Well, and they have the dudes to do it. Like, not everybody can do that,
Yep.
Especially in college. And, we compare the NBA game to the college game a lot of times. And it's like, well, in college, a lot of times you just don't have the dudes that can run the same type of offense. Like, nobody's running Golden State's offense in college because you don't have 4 or 5 guys that can all hit threes at 35% or above. They just can't. And one of the things that drives me nuts when we're talking about Edey just letting a guy go, in college, it seems like the big guy always tries to contest that shot. And it's like, what's your worth on the offensive end compared to that one foul? Like sometimes just let that dude go, He's already got it. He's got you beat. Let him get that dunk. Leave it alone. You're worth more to us on the offensive end than that one foul trying to protect one rim shot. So I was glad to see Edey do it early.
Right. And on the first play of the game, and to me, it's not 6 fouls like the NBA, it's 5. So it's a little bit of gamesmanship. Once you pick up that first foul, 2 is when you got to go to the bench for sure. But 1, that changes the way you have to play defense now, so it changes the complexion. So you could try to be a little more aggressive because you go, I got 5 in my pocket, but at the same time, now Painter's got to manage you differently and manage your minutes differently. Yeah. So ultimately,
if he's got you beat, let him go.
Right, you're gonna.
It's 2 points over a 40-minute game.
And then when you get to the end, now you have all those fouls in your pocket. Now you're saying no easy buckets when you come down.
Right, and just to be, the guy's averaging 2.2 blocks a game. Like, he's been a stud shot blocker this year, and really one of the best rim protectors, because I think just his presence bothers people. That's why Purdue plays that drop coverage. They funnel guys in there, and now you're taking a mid-range pull-up or a floater, with a 7'4" guy looming, maybe not right with a great contest, but at least in your line of sight, and trying to get that shot up and in. And I think that's why they've been a pretty good defensive team this year. I do think, like, the one that really annoyed me, just because I wish he would have been higher up on just knowing the personnel, that last shot by McNeil. Like, you got to get higher up there. You got to have a little more of a contest, especially when it's Lawyer who's being screened, who's not the most physical guy. And then obviously McNeil buries that, and we're all thinking, oh, God, here we go again. But again, it's like you're not gonna be perfect every possession.
But
You're
Purdue
not.
dared him to shoot that mid-range, and in the first half they hit it, and they hit it. In the second half they didn't.
And that's playing the results, right? Remember, that's playing the process, right? From Painter's perspective, process over results. Eventually,
that's Joe's game, right? That statistics masters. That's Joe's game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just playing the long game, like the averages, they eventually even out. Going back to that lawyer, which led up McNeil. Do you think that was supposed to be an ice coverage, Aidan, and then it just didn't happen, or what? Because I felt like we'd been icing for anybody that doesn't know.
Why was lawyer in there to start with, though? Like,
was
that's what I didn't understand, because we came out of a timeout, and you were playing defense, and you were going to call a timeout for offense already. That's the only Painter decision I question all night. Like, why didn't you have Jenkins in there or Newman in there? Why was lawyer in there on defense?
All right, so before you give that answer, set it up and explain what you mean, A, by the play we're talking about, and B, what you mean by ice coverage, because I'm a caveman over here. We
had Raphael explain this last year.
I'm a caveman over here, and I need you to explain it to me like I'm 5, and maybe there's some people in the chat that do as well, and I want to hear this.
Yeah. So I don't remember exactly what led up to the play, but it was the Sean McNeil where he oh man, this everything's just jumbled for me. But he hits the 3 that I believe put them up 2, or something like that. About a minute left, and so basically what happened was, I think it might have been an offensive rebound. They kick it out, or no, they're swinging it. That's what it is. They swing it to McNeil. He's on the right wing. Purdue pretty consistently has been icing this ball screen, and what that means is you'll see. In this case, it was supposed to be lawyer. Whoever's guarding the ball, you'll see them just turn their back pretty much to the center line, and they're fully facing the sideline. And so what they're doing is they're trying to make the ball handler go away from the screen and go towards that sideline. Where when we run the ice coverage, you're pushing to the sideline, and now Edey's there just in his drop coverage, and now he doesn't have to try to he only has to worry about north-south now. He doesn't have to worry about east-west. So just kind of keeping that ball handler contained. Purdue does it all the time, and they didn't there. And I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was just like a. I was just gonna say I didn't know if it was just like a miscommunication. The screen didn't get called out, or if they just maybe they just weren't doing it that time.
No, you're good. And we had a little miscommunication because your Wi-Fi was lagging a little bit. So then my bad. You're fine. Joe's Wi-Fi was lagging a little bit. When Kraig popped in, I think when you heard him, that's kind of where the delay came from.
That's what Raphael said last year too. You're just trying to isolate a guy to one side. Like you're trying to limit him to block off a section of the court so that you only have to defend one side, more or less, right? So
and especially if you have a guy who has a weak hand, and maybe you're forcing it to his weak hand and icing it. That's especially effective, right? Trying to force guys to the sideline where that extra defender, quote unquote, of the sideline is. And I think Joe, looking back at it, they absolutely should have iced that. And just lawyer got caught, and McNeil, a great shooter, hits that bailout 3. I mean, those are the types of shots we kind of seen Jenkins hit a little bit this year, like just a late clock high ball screen, and then you just pull up off of it because guys are going crazy in that late clock situation. I can't remember
are any
what
of
the
us
question
excited about the fact that lawyer was in there on defense versus Jenkins?
Oh yeah. I would say that
I'm confused by that. That was the one thing I was confused about.
I would say that I think Painter would tell you that he likes lawyer's length versus Jenkins. Now, lawyer's physicality and ball screens is worse than Jenkins, and that's what got us burned.
That harder to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
guess Painter probably wasn't expecting McNeil to get a high pick and roll as Ohio State's option. Sure. That's where you're concerned with lawyer, right? So
and that was such a good defensive possession. They denied suing. I think Gillis just denied.
They kept them from what they wanted to run. They were trying to get it into the post, and they got a bailout 3. That's the kind of stuff. And Painter's probably just like, okay, they did their job, and I'm pissed off because I don't like.
That happened last game too, right?
Well, last game was. Don't even get me started. Last game, they go to this thing called. It's called pistol action. It's basically just a quick handoff to try and attack a switching defense. when you have a quick handoff, it confuses the two guys. Are we supposed to switch? Are we not? Right? And you end up in last game, you get Mulcahy switched onto Braden. And so now he's getting into his back down as Mulcahy does, and you think, oh, God, he's going to get an easy layup. And now Morton just completely leaves the elite shooter, Spencer, and goes to try and double. Just got lost. And you're always going to take a 2. You're always going to rather have Braden get back down and bullied, which, by the way, you have a 7'4" rim protector behind Braden. But no, let's leave the elite three-point shooter and let him get a great look to win the game. So that was
you saw that tonight with Ohio State.
Though, Braggs. Let's give Morton his due. I mean, we can essentially say Morton lost the game last game.
Yeah,
by coming back, and Morton won the game.
Won it tonight
by getting that steal. So,
yeah, he was. I mean, yes, the threes are frustrating, but he's a really good player, guys, and really you have to have him out there for his defense because he's the only guy who can guard guys like Sensabaugh. Yeah, I mean, you just don't have anybody else who can do that.
And to your point about leaving guys, we saw that with Ohio State tonight. They left. Braden after Painter calls the timeout with 7 seconds on the shot clock. Braden starts to crash to the rim. Their defender lags too hard into the paint and leaves Mason Gillis wide open for 3, who's a 35% 3-point shooter. So they got bailed out because Mason didn't knock down the shot, but probably sagging off a little too hard there. So
and I think just one last thing on the Edey conversation that I wanted to point out from the final play that got Lawyer the 3. It's like I think it's really, really hard to guard Edey in those situations because, I mean, obviously, right? But you're throwing him the ball and you want to double team him because if you don't double team him, it's an easy 2 and they're going to take the lead, right? Purdue was down 1 at the time, I think. Or maybe they were down 2. I can't remember. But, you're going to give Edey, if you don't double Edey, he's going to score it over Okpara there. But what Painter does, of course, because he's really, really smart, is he has Fletcher Lawyer throw the inbounds pass. And so now the only guy who can double is Lawyer's man, because if you double with anybody else, Edey's already scored it. It's too late. They can't get over in time. And so the only guy you can double with is the passer. It's Lawyer. Easy kick out right to an elite shooter. Like, I think that's kind of like the just impossible part about guarding Edey in that situation. Like, you have to double. The only guy you can double with is Lawyer's man, and Lawyer's an elite shooter. Easy pass back out. We get the win. So I think Edey is just a unique player right now, and just in those situations, I can't even imagine trying to guard him.
Yeah, it's he's great, man. He's a big time team leader. Yeah, the internet, Mike. When we stepped away for a minute, they all thought we lost you.
Actually, my internet was working. It was my mic that wasn't working, and I have no idea why.
No, he was talking because that was when you stepped. He's talking about when you stepped away for a minere.
Oh no, dude! I'm 45 and I can't go over an hour without taking a leak.
His bladder, Well, you might be having a drink or two after a game like this, and it catches up to you, but. Michael also says the all-time series between Ohio State and Purdue is at 92-92, and that's
importantly, Purdue does not have a losing record against any team in the Big Ten right now.
Pretty impressive, and
this was the only team we had a losing record to before tonight, and we tied it up.
And that's thanks to plays like this. And this is kind of, for those of you that are new to our show, this is kind of what we do here at Braggs in the Stands. We're calling our shows Boilers in the Stands, when we do our Boilermaker coverage, but this is what we do here, and we're going to give you different, perspectives and try to get you some, footage where you can kind of see what we're talking about here. We got a lot of stuff, in the hopper that we can pull up. And, kind of give you that fan in the stands perspective because, I take a lot of pride in representing the fans in the stands. We got a lot of media members out there. They're all covering the game their way, and that's great. I enjoy, that coverage that helps us become smarter fans. But at the end of the day, we're all about the fans in the stands because the fans are just as vital to this sport as everybody else, So, it's exciting to see Purdue, pull off dramatic wins like that one last year. And then this one tonight on the road. They've had some dramatic wins at Ohio State. Jaden Ivey his freshman year hitting the big time 3. So, it's never an off night in the Big Ten. And Jeremy Armstrong, yes. Coach Matt Painter got the water shower in the locker room post game from the guys. And for those of you that don't follow their social media stuff, they typically do that for the player of the game, especially if he does something he's never done before. So for the players to give Coach Painter that water shower as he came in had to have been a special moment. And, as pissed off as Matt Painter was in the presser after the Rutgers game, and a lot of different quotes and video got a lot of play on social media. Kraig pointed out, like, hey, Matt Painter said, if we're going to war, we're stopping by New Jersey and picking up the Rutgers. But beyond that, his criticism of his own team was very harsh and poignant.
Well, he was really critical of Smith.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen. I mean, I've only been going to Postgame this year, right? But I've not seen Painter be that critical of somebody. Just point blank, like, this was Smith's worst game. Like, he just flat out said that right off the back. As soon as he got asked about it, he said this was Braden's worst game.
Right.
And Braden responded in an nth degree kind of way tonight.
100%.
I think, Newbert said it in his kind of like post-game wrap-up video. Painter knew what he was doing when he called out Smith specifically. Like, there's guys you can do that with, and there are guys you can't.
100%.
Smith, as you kind of said before, Bragg, Smith is a gamer. Smith is fiery. Smith is going to take it to you. And a comment like that, he's not going to get like butthurt about it. He's just going to take it and be like, all right, I'm going to be better. Like, you aren't going to say that about me again. And he showed it today.
Yeah, and I think if anybody watched the
Kevin Durant tweeted about Purdue.
I mean, we're number one in the country on Fox Sports. We're still number one in the country. Gus Johnson, he kept bringing it up in the telecast. Like, not for long. Shut up, Gus. Like, they're number one until Sunday. Okay, they still got another game as number one in the country. And then after that, I don't give a shit if they're number one again for the rest of the year.
And Houston and who's three?
Houston and Kansas. So
they may both lose. Arizona's not going to lose. Houston has to play Cincy in Cincy, which is always a tough game, dude. I grew up 45 minutes from Cincy. My brother graduated from Cincy. I don't care what anybody says. Home games against Cincy are tough. Yep. That's going to be a tough game.
And at the end of the day, I wanted them to get number one in non-conference play in November, December, because that's early in the year. They're in Big Ten play. That stuff does not matter anymore. In fact, I don't even want them to be number one in the country. I wanted it so desperately in November, December. I don't want it. I don't need it anymore.
You were begging for it last year, Braggs.
I was begging for it because it was a monumental moment. It's a big thing. I'm not going to fight it if they have it, but at the end of the day, it does not matter anymore. We all knew this team was going to lose some games. They could have easily lost tonight. They could have easily won the other night. That's how every game the rest of the way is going to be in the Big Ten. I have a lot of faith in Matt Painter that he's going to find the way to win the majority of those games. But at the end of the day, this team coming in was in a rebuild season. So now we're starting to see here in Big Ten play some of their flaws or some of the things that they have to grow in. And so I'm totally fine with wherever they're ranked because I know they're going to battle their ass off. And at the end of the day, when March Madness comes around, talk about going to war with the team. I would go to war with this team any day. These guys are fighters. So, Aidan, what were you saying about KD's tweet?
Yeah, he just tweeted about Purdue. Said we played a nice game. Complimented the OSU guys.
That's a tough win on the road by Purdue. Ohio State got some young Hoopers over there. The Big Ten is some good bump. And then he also just tweeted about IU. He said IU should be up 20, but they're playing solid right now. Just like the rest of us, just enjoying some Big Ten hoops.
What is the score of the IU game anyway?
They're up 10.5.
IU's up.
Who are they playing?
At Iowa.
Iowa's terrible.
And Iowa was favored, I believe, going into that game.
40.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And I believe Iowa was favored going.
Iowa was favored, yeah.
Well, they're a bottom 4 team in the Big Ten. I don't care what Raphael Davis says. I love Raphael. I love him, but he has been like clinging on to Iowa, and I've been selling Iowa for a long time.
Yeah, he has been. But just to kind of bring it back here, I think we probably should hit on Braden a little bit more. He is really the only guy who off the dribble can put pressure on the rim for Purdue, at least in this game he was. I mean, Lawyer, I guess, did some of that against Nebraska. But, I think his creativity off the bounce, his just when he decides he wants to take over a game, I think that's when he's at his best. When he decides, like, I don't care, like I'm shooting, I'm getting to my spots, I'm going to create for others, and I do
He's
think,
fearless.
yeah, he is. He's fearless, and I do think Purdue may have found something tonight. You could tell from the jump. We're running a bunch of ball screen action. They always run a ball screen in transition with Edey coming up to set a drag screen, which is just a early ball screen for Smith. But tonight they were waiting, and some of the sets that Painter usually runs, he kind of threw out the window and had Braden come off a ball screen from Edey and make a play. Got him a ton of good looks. Oh my God. He had several like potential assists that Purdue guys just blew in the first half. And really, I thought the only guy for Ohio State who bothered him was Ice Likely, who's super long. He's like 6'5" strong, really long wingspan. But all the other guys, I didn't think Braden had much of an issue at all, especially Bruce Thornton, his freshman counterpart, who he outplayed soundly tonight. So I think he's the type of guy, just to finish, he's the type of guy who needs someone to call him out. If you watched a little video of his like media availability that they have on Golden Black YouTube, he was pissed. Like they asked him, "What do you have to do in the ball screens?" Just got to make plays. Like this was hammered into his head after that Rutgers game, and he responded in a big way. He took coaching. He watched the film, and obviously he showed well for himself on a big stage tonight.
Yeah, he definitely responded. To me, one of my favorite plays of the game, obviously the game winner is going to get all the press, Fletcher Loyer knocking down the shot. But to me, my favorite play of the game was Braden Smith's defense that turned to offense to tie the game. He pickpockets the guy he's defending. He's falling out of bounds. He saves it, keeps it, and passes it back inbounds, gets up court. They give it back to him as he's going to the baseline.
Pulls the trigger.
Pulls the trigger and knocks down a three. He was aggressive with his three-point shot when they were saying, we're going to dare you to take it. We're going to play off of you to protect the post. He took the shot there, but that play in particular, and then he let the crowd know. I love that attitude about him. He hit that 1-3 in the corner. It was a really funny moment because he hits the shot. The defender falls right at his feet. And I think his first instinct was to kind of stand over him because all of a sudden then he's trying to help him up. And I'm yelling, don't help him up, get back on defense. And even the coaches on the sideline are yelling it. But I honestly think he was just trying to cover it up because initially he was doing this Allen Iverson stand over you thing. And he was like, oh, I better not get a technical. Let me extend my arm. And then he comes running back. But just overall, to your point, he's a gamer. The fact that we have him and obviously Fletcher Loyer, TKR for what it seems like will be 4 years, they're going to be a nightmare for teams. And, he let Ohio State's crowd know it all night long. And that's not going to change as years go forward. And Purdue is very lucky to have that guy.
Yeah, he's just an ace for Purdue. Like, 4 or 5 games that he's just really just dominating pick and roll. There's just not much else to say, I think, other than he's a gamer. He's going to make the right plays. Sometimes he's going to do it in a weird way that gets him in trouble. With some passes that a little excessive, but he was one of my. I was super excited to watch him coming in the year, and he's done nothing but impress for the most part to me.
Yeah, and much like Ivy last year, like it's how much you limit that trouble, right? Like both of those guys can create. Smith in a little bit different way.
In different ways.
A lot of times he's looking to create for somebody else, whereas Ivy's looking to create for his own shot. But you're always just like, well, you have to limit those moments of you put yourself in too much trouble and you don't have an escape route from this. But I don't know. A lot of Purdue fans got huffy and puffy about when Ivy would do that last year, and I'm not going to go any further with that, Braggs. I'm just going to leave it alone. But we need to understand that both of those guys have an intense level of creativity. And you have to, even Painter said it in the post-game press conference after the last game, like to some degree, you don't want to be too hard on Braden because Braden has to be Braden to be special. Like you can't strip that from him. And just like you can't strip that from Ivy last year, like they're going to have their moments where it looks bad, but they're going to have more moments where it looks good. And you have to let him be who he is. So.
Yeah. So, definitely. We have a couple different questions in the chat that I feel like we covered earlier on. We were talking about, what changed from the first half to the second half as far as, them not shooting well. And like we talked about, the process was there. They were getting the open shots. And in the second half, those shots just started to fall down. We've kind of been over it, so I don't want to get back into it again. But if, there's portions of the show you missed, we definitely, when this show's over, it'll be available right on YouTube. I encourage you to watch the start of it because, we've definitely had some excellent conversation and insight about it. Like I said, I just don't want to go over it again because we're starting to round third when it comes to this show. We'll try to do as many post-game shows live when they're on the road because we're all at home when they're on the road. When they're at Mackey Arena, we're normally at Mackey. So, Joe and Aidan, they do spaces on Twitter where we talk about it once we get back to our cars. And, we have a good conversation there, but it's not live on video like we're doing here on YouTube and Facebook.
Not all this production.
Yeah, it's not as much production, but that's okay because we'll do what we can, to provide coverage for the fans. And, Aidan's coaching, so he'll be in and out, and we'll do what we can here. We had another question in the chat.
Can I add one thing to that first question, though, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we talked shots just start falling. One thing to notice is like how good, like Purdue gets a lot of good looks, but even within that, I think there's a range. As much as Lawyer can hit that little side step as the player flies by, like that's not as good of a shot as the pure catch and shoot. And I think Purdue is getting a little bit more just like pure standstill catch and shoot. It's a minor thing. Like I think a lot of these guys, Lawyer, Smith, Newman, when he gets going, like Jenkins, they can all hit these shots on the move, not fully set, but there is a time that they kind of get that a little too much, I think. And when they get fully set shots, that's when it really, really starts to fall.
Absolutely. And then the other question we had that we have covered from Derek here, he asked, what are the thoughts about Newman only getting 4 minutes? And again, we covered this earlier in the show when, we talked about David Jenkins getting into the rotation. It just wasn't Newman's night when it comes to that. Jenkins, obviously Painter saw a better rotation there. Again, not trying to blow you off on the question, but, if you go back earlier, we did spend a good 5 to 7 minutes talking about that. So I encourage you to hop back in there unless somebody has something to add on the Newman thing. But I just don't want to elongate, what we're trying to do here. Because we could, the four of us are so passionate about this. We could go for 2 hours and I am the king of making things go way too long.
But,
go ahead,
somebody
Kraig.
did ask if Zed Key's injury made a difference. Obviously. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't know how that's going to play out because when we played Iowa last year, right, Keegan Murray was hurt. Did we lose that game last year when Keegan was hurt?
We won by 7, I believe. We were up like 14.
But it was super tight, right? And then
we were up big, and then they pressed, and we couldn't handle the press to save our life. That was the game. That was the game where we won, and then
we beat them at Iowa also, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was even a bigger point spread when we beat them at Iowa. Like, you don't know how people are going to respond to injury and whatnot. And like, it made a difference, obviously. Zed Key is one of Ohio State's most 2 or 3 important players. Like, I don't think there's any way to deny that. But also, when guys get hurt in the middle of games, it gets funky sometimes. Like, you don't know how people are going to respond, and I don't think you can just like translate that over an entire 5 or 6 game stretch of that guy being out also.
Yeah, and I think Akpara showed really well for himself. Like I said earlier, like he guarded Edey pretty well. He's got some length. He got a couple key rebounds there. Who knows what Zed Key would have done. I think you kind of just take this win and you run. I mean, they're a really good team. They really are. Like that's a legitimate, I think, to me, one of the best teams in the Big Ten. I think you guys would agree with that. I mean, that's a great road win. Really, it is.
Yep.
Yeah. I have them 3rd in my power rankings right now.
I mean,
I have Rutgers 2.
And Rutgers are certainly shooting up the chart. They beat Maryland tonight at home handedly, pretty much. I mean, I think it ended up being like a 12-point game, but they were in control of that all night. And I said at the start of the year, I thought Rutgers were a dark horse to win the Big Ten, which sounds crazy when you consider what the program was maybe 5 years ago. But Peichel is doing a great job over there, just as good as what Matt Painter's doing over here. Got a lot of respect for that coach and that program and those players. So it'll be interesting to see if we meet again down the road in the Big Ten tournament. We got some, funny comments in the chat.
Did you see Race Thompson got hurt and is on crutches tonight?
Wow.
Oh, really?
No, I didn't see that.
Well, then the hits just keep coming.
A buddy of mine just texted me that. So they've lost Xavier, and now Race is also out and on crutches.
Wow.
The hits then keep on coming depending on what the injury is when they've lost Xavier Johnson for what it seems like the year, and then see what they have with Race Thompson. I mean, this is going to be a bloodbath when it comes to the Big Ten. Illinois lost to Northwestern last night. They fall to 0-3 in the Big Ten. So for Purdue to move up to 3-1 instead of 2-2, that's
Joe loves Illinois.
He's not giving up. He's holding on. He's like that Spider-Man gif where he's like holding the train as Brad Underwood's behind the wheel of this train.
He loves Michigan too, so he's. I
can buy into Michigan more than I can Illinois.
I know Michigan. Michigan
last night, like Michigan's freshmen. If you've watched them over the last 2 or 3 games since they lost to Central Michigan, I think like those guys are starting to buy into like this.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think we got to give them credit for that.
Yeah, I can buy into Michigan more than I can buy into Illinois. I don't think anybody. I think everybody in Illinois is still all about me.
On the podcast, on Feed the Post that we did, we power ranked kind of, or we projected what we thought would be the standings right before this, Big Ten picked up again. And at the end, we tried to throw out a name outside of like the top 3 or 4 that we thought would win. And we both were like, hey, if things click for Michigan, like their ceiling's there.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge.
We're not confident it's going to be there consistently, but if they can get there, they have a top, 3 player in the conference, and then, really good shooters or some good shooters around them, some good playmakers. So,
well, and I mean, Jet Howard is arguably one of the best 2 or 3 freshmen.
Yeah.
But probably the bigger thing
well.
is their second and third freshmen are both top 10 freshmen in the league too.
I like McDaniel.
Yeah,
I like McDaniel a lot.
So we're seeing in the chat here, they're saying Race Thompson got rolled up on by his own player in the first half, and we're no.
I don't care if he plays for IU or not. You never want to see somebody get injured like that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you want to beat teams at their best. It's only going to make you better as a team. Because then Indiana fans will have excuses too when we go there and beat them at Assembly Hall. But hopefully a speedy recovery for Race Thompson.
Rex is just worried about the excuses, not the injury.
No, I'm worried. I just want to throw a shot at IU fans. I don't like them up. Just going over this one last time. If there's anything that stands out to you on this stat sheet, we've got Ohio State shot 50% from the field, Purdue 43%. 3-point percentage, 43%, 42 for Ohio State, 42% for Purdue, 13 of 31. They got 31 3-point shots up to Ohio State's 14. From the free throw line, 8 of 10 for Purdue, 5 of 7 for Ohio State. So not many free throws taken in this game. Turnovers, 14 turnovers for Purdue. They had 13 against Rutgers the other night. Ohio State kept it under 10. They had 7 turnovers on the game. Rebounds, which what the fuck? Knocked my shit off. Holy crap. What is going on here? Rebounds. We're falling off the map here. 37 rebounds to 27 for Ohio State. 21 defensively. 16 offensive rebounds. I'm like leaning in. That's why I knocked my damn mic, because I can't read this shit.
I can't.
Points in the paint, 22.
I think the
fast
only reason
break.
that Joe and Aidan can read it is because it's like on a big screen for them.
No,
whereas
they're
me-
young.
me-
That's why
me
they
and
can
you are-
read
No,
it.
me and you are both on the StreamYard app, so it's like condensed with the comments, and it's like big screen for them.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, regardless, we're still old. So, five fast break points to 7 for Ohio State, 4 steals, 8 steals for Ohio State, assists, 15 for Purdue, 11 for Ohio State. And lead time, Ohio State led for almost 26 minutes, and Purdue under 10 minutes. So, for you guys down there, Joe, I'll start with you because you're our numbers guy here. Any of those numbers stand out to you there?
The free throws is the big one. 10 free throws on the year. I'm checking really, really quick. I can't check there. I think that probably is the lowest on the year. If I had to guess. Maybe there might have been a game I'm missing, but only 10 free throws attempts. We can say what you want about the refs, whatever. Not whatever, but nothing you can actually do about that. I think it was part of just not getting the ball into Edey as much, and Ohio State really just collapsed into him. So still made 8 out of 10, which is good. And then the offensive rebounding, that's where Purdue got offensive rebounds, but they allowed offensive rebounds against Rutgers, whereas this was a little more, what Purdue expects to do on the offensive glass. Let's see. This is really bad on my part. There we go. 16 offensive rebounds, to 9. So Purdue rebounded almost 47% of their misses, whereas Ohio State only rebounded 30% of their misses. With an offense that's good, getting second chances like that is you're going to score eventually.
Aidan, any thoughts? So any of the stats that I pulled up, I know we're starting to get a little lengthy on this. We'll try to keep these under an hour or hour and a half, whatever we want to do, but just trying to try different things out.
I don't know that any of those numbers really jumped out at me, but I just had one observation, which is I think the sense of balls and the suings of the world, although Purdue doesn't typically have tough shot makers like that. I do think, and I would tell anyone watching, we do have one. He's just in the high school class of 2024, and he's playing at Brownsburg High School, Cannon Catchings. I mean, that guy, I have been so high on that guy. I've seen him play. He's under-recruited right now. Shocker, a Purdue commit's under-recruited. And he's a special talent, 6'7", long, tough shot maker. Just put 40 on Kokomo and Flory Badunga the other night. So for anyone who's near the Indy area, Brownsburg High School, Cannon Catchings, I think he is going to be that type of shot maker once he gets to Purdue in a couple of years. So I think that might be coming. I know some people would say Miles Colvin, and he may have some of that too. But I think Cannon Catchings, he's the type of guy who can be a difference maker and a tough shot maker. And maybe Purdue will start to have some of those guys in the future that we see with Ohio State. So.
And the future remains bright. Let's kick it around for final thoughts, and then we'll wrap this baby up so everybody can go watch the conclusion of this Iowa IU game. As David says, the lead's cut to 6. IU's lead is cut to 6, so that's certainly interesting. I'll start with you, Joe, and what are your final thoughts for the game?
Yeah, just
you'll get your turn, Kraig.
Grinded out win, not a pretty win, but as Aidan kind of mentioned, I don't know if there's maybe only 2 or 3 better wins in the conference period. And then if you look at Purdue's schedule, they don't play at Rutgers or anything like that. So this probably could be like their best win, taking into account on the road in that and quality of team. Huge from the freshman to, Smith had it going pretty much the whole game. Lawyer really got it going in that second half, 3 of 4 from 3. Really, really, really good to see shots finally fall. This is kind of what we at least somewhat expected, at least closer to that number. The 42% or whatever, closer to that number than what they've been shooting. And just another game where it shows like Purdue's just going to kind of be there and they're going to find ways. I can't, they'll probably have one blowout loss because everybody does. But aside from that, they're going to be, right there in games or even just having a sizable lead. National Player of the Year in Edey. And when you have that and he affects the game in just without even having to purely score the ball. They got all the pieces that it's really tough to beat Purdue.
And for people that aren't aware of some of the things you do, as far as content wise and work on social media, why don't you tell them where they can find you and the work that you do?
Yeah. So main thing is find me at Twitter at Joe_Jackson2210, shown right there. So I do game threads day after every game, kind of go through, rewatch, post. It ends up being anywhere from 30 to 40 clips, of what I think are important possessions, just trying to break down the X's and O's, trying to learn more. And then me and Aidan do a podcast, Feed the Post _ on Twitter, or just Feed the Post we're on Apple, Google, Spotify. So we kind of need to talk about this, but I'm going to speak for us right now that I think the plan is to do one Purdue podcast and one Big Ten podcast a week, just kind of going through whatever. So find us there. That's the big thing. I also write at cbbreview.com. And then one last thing before I, hand it over is because I wanted to get this in way earlier when we were talking about Morton. But if the season ended today, Morton's an all defensive team defender. And I don't think that can be taken lightly.
100%. He shows up when it counts. He's a gamer too, in my opinion. So, Aidan, I'll go to you next. Your final thoughts on the game, and when you're done, maybe let everybody know what you're up to and where they can find you.
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Joe said. I thought Purdue did some things tonight that they haven't necessarily shown. I keep harping on it, but the effectiveness out of ball screens with Braden and Zach, that just hammering that home more. It's not Coach Painter's nature to want to run a lot of ball screen offense. We know that. We know he likes a lot of sets, a lot of stuff where there's quite a bit of movement and you're manipulating it to get it to the post, and that's great. And it works very, very well most of the time. Tonight, though, Ohio State had a good game plan. Some of that stuff was taken away by their length, their athleticism, their scouting. And again, Coach Painter, I think, smartly pivoted to putting the game in Braden's hands, letting Braden cook a little bit. And he made plays for others. He opened up the offense. And so I'm just fascinated to see how that continues to look as the season progresses. He's been hesitant to do that. Kind of let him do it tonight. We saw that some in the Marquette game, but he really embraced it tonight. And it was enough to beat a quality opponent on the road. And I think that's an important takeaway for Purdue as we move forward here. Not much for me. I'm on Twitter at Aidan Kunst, Kunst there. You can find me obviously on the sidelines, West Lafayette High School. We are kind of halfway through our season, so continuing to work there. And like I said, I'll sort of join the conversation on Twitter, but looking forward to doing more of these shows. This has been a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep getting better as we go and keep building this out. Kraig, final thoughts and what you do and where they can find you.
I'm a little bit with Edey here in terms of I've been for 2 years now, maybe more. I've been preaching just to give a little bit more of that high ball screen creativity, whether it was Jaden last year or Braden tonight. Partway through the first half when things were getting stagnant and Ohio State obviously knew where we were going with our sets, I was just begging for Painter to give Braden that ball and just let him go high ball screen and create on his own. And we saw what it did. I mean, obviously, I'm not making $6-7 million a year, so I'm not going to critique too much. But man, I'd sure love to see Braden have the decision making in his hands at certain times. And I guess my final thought is we're going to play close games. This is the Big Ten, right? And the Big Ten has a lot of good teams. If you look at KenPom, if you look at the net ratings, certain teams are better than others, and we're going to play several of those. I thought this was our toughest stretch. If you look at the entire season, you go Rutgers, you go Ohio State, you go Penn State. Personally, I think for stylistically, in terms of how we play compared to the team we're playing against, for a 3-game stretch, I thought this was our hardest 3-game stretch of the entire year. So to get out of Ohio State with a win, I think is major. I think what Morton did, what Smith did tonight, both of those things were huge. And Penn State's not going to be easy. And I guess finally, I just have to ask Joe what's up with the sparkly curtains in the background.
Calling you out.
I'm not calling them out. I gotta know. I gotta know where the sparkly.
They've got boiler colors to them too.
Yeah,
I thought, is that like prom picture stuff or like what's happening there?
New Year's Eve decorations. So
okay.
Honestly,
still up. They kind of work though. I didn't hate it.
I think they look very
it's black and gold, like it fit the Purdue thing.
Exactly.
Like, where's that coming from, man?
I mean,
I actually bought them just for this. I thought it was a good backdrop.
It really is. I mean, maybe you get the iron out
Brax was like,
hey,
we're gonna do a post game.
Brax iron out some of the creases, maybe. I mean, I think it's a really nice background, personally. Something that maybe the Purdue creative will want. I mean, for Purdue recruits that they put on.
Aidan, you got to get something. It's just a white wall, dude.
I know. That's but just my personality.
Is it a Mad Sis wants to know if it's a shower curtain? We don't know. It just looks good. Yeah. It works. Maybe. So we could my final thoughts. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We've gotten a lot of nice comments from the chat. Lynn Hampson jumping in. Great post-game show. I really appreciate these kind words. I encourage everybody that's still tuned in to please hit the like button on your way out. That's going to help grow what we're trying to do here from a YouTube channel standpoint. I mean, for other people to find it, the more likes that are hit, the better the algorithm takes it and runs with it and sends it to people that aren't aware of what we do. And we're going to do a lot more fun stuff when it comes to this, and try to integrate segments and, even maybe send you the link. And if you want to come in and ask the question yourself, or, have a little guest segment spot where you come in and ask a question and give your thought, try to do some of those little things here and there and just see, we're going to try different things as the season goes along and have fun with it. So again, I appreciate everyone's kind words and stuff. And it sounds like I use in a dog fight, so I'm not going to try to be too long with my Midwestern goodbye. But again,
you have a Midwestern goodbye.
It's Midwestern goodbye is where we sit here for 10 minutes and I ramble on about everything. We got Luis Bonilla, maybe Bobby Bonilla.
You're starting it.
Greetings from Portland. I love it. Portland, Purdue won a big tournament out in Portland. So, thank you for everyone again for tuning in tonight. We're going to do plenty of more of these, probably more so for the road games. I know somebody was busting our balls in the chat that they want us to do them for all. Michael Hogg saying inexcusable. You need to start doing this even for home games as well. Well, Kraig and I are media credentialed for the whole year at Mackey Arena. So we're there, and then we go to the post-game press conference and we listen to the players and Matt Painter and the opposing head coach. So, we don't get out of there till late. I live an hour away from it. So it's just not feasible for the home games. Again, Joe and Aidan do spaces on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, follow them. And then once we get into our cars, they're doing a spaces, we hop in and we all give our thoughts there. It's just not available in video form, but we're going to do these as much as we can. They're doing their separate podcast, Feed the Post, and doing their coverage on Twitter and social media in general. And then Kraig and I will do shows within the week when we can as well and bring on different guests. We've already had Matt Painter on, first guest of the year. Chris Kramer has come on. Bobby Riddell is a good friend to this show. We always bug him to come on. Rafael Davis, Robbie Hummel. We get some fun guests. We just had Fletcher Lawyer on here recently.
Man of the hour.
Yeah, man of the hour. So, and we even have some current players scheduled to come on here as the season progresses, but we try to fit it in where we're not hurting their, what's more important, and that's getting ready for the game and the homework they have to get done. So a lot of different coverage coming your way, and we're going to give it to you all season long. So that's my spiel. Thank you again for everybody for tuning in. Aidan, Joe, thank you for joining us and agreeing to kind of come together with what we're trying to do here. And Kraig, as always, thank you for having my back. We had some technical difficulties. We fought through it.
I have no idea what happened. All I had to do was unplug my headphones.
I know. They got theirs on lock, and then we're over here. I'm knocking my mic over and stuff. But hey, like I said, brick by brick. Rome was not built in a day. And by the end of the year, we're going to be
As long as we all understand that Justin Fields is not a franchise quarterback.
All right, this is exactly where it ends. So, thank you. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. Boilers win. We'll see you on Sunday as soon as the game's over against Penn State. Well, I got to make sure I can commit to that because I got to cover the Bears. But Sunday, we're gonna be here. I'll do everything I can, and we'll be talking Boilers. So. Big win tonight. Last second shot. Fletcher Lawyer, cold as ice. Thank you again for tuning in. And always, Boiler up.